My name is Julia Holloway. I'm 32 years old. Last Saturday, at my sister's engagement dinner, my mother introduced me to the groom's family. She smiled at them the way she smiles at neighbors, warm, rehearsed, and said, "This is our other daughter. She cleans houses for a living." My dad nodded. Didn't miss a beat. We've given up on her. 23 guests, white tablecloth, bread baskets still warm. And the groom's mother. A woman I had met once before, 18 months ago, across a boardroom table, set down her fork, looked me dead in the eye, and whispered, "Wait, you're her?" My mom lost all color. What happened in the next 40 minutes broke something in my family that I don't think will ever go back together. But I need you to hear how we got there, because the dinner was just the detonation. The fuse had been burning for 10 years. Welcome to my channel. Before we get into this, please take a moment to like and subscribe. It helps more than you know. And while you're at it, drop a comment telling me where you're watching from and what time it is where you are. I love reading those. Now, let me take you back 10 years, to the night my family decided I wasn't worth the investment. I grew up in Carver, Indiana. Population 9,000. The kind of town where everybody knows your dad's car and your mom's casserole recipe. My father, Gerald, has worked at the same insurance company for 30 years, same desk, same title, regional claims manager, a position he got at 31 and never left. My mother, Diane, was a sharp woman. She could run payroll in her head. She did books for 3 local businesses before I was born. Then she got pregnant with me, and my dad told her it was time to stay home. So she did. She never went back. I don't think she ever forgave us for that. Not me. Not my sister. Not really. My sister Paige is 4 years younger. 28 now. She works as a marketing coordinator in Indianapolis. She's been promoted twice in 3 years, and every time she is, my mother calls me. Not to share Paige's news, to make sure I've heard it. Our living room wall tells the whole story. Paige's diplomas, Paige's Employee of the Quarter plaque, Paige's sorority composite. My frames stop at my college graduation photo. 4 years of a business degree, and that's the last thing I did that made sense to them. There's a rhythm to how my mother introduces us at church, at grocery stores, at family reunions. Paige just got promoted again. Pause. Then the pivot. Julia's still doing her thing. My dad never corrects her. He never adds detail. He just stands there with his hands in his pockets, looking at the floor like a man waiting for his number to be called at the deli counter. Silence is a kind of agreement. I learned that early. The summer I turned 22, I had a degree in business administration and a suitcase full of plans. My mother had other ones. She'd enrolled me in an MBA program at the state university, paid the deposit, told my dad's coworkers, printed the course catalog, and left it on my nightstand like a hymnal. I sat her down at the kitchen table one Thursday evening and told her I wasn't going. "I'm starting a commercial cleaning company," I said. I had a binder, market research, cost projections, a 12-month cash flow estimate. She didn't look at the binder. 14 seconds. That's how long she sat in silence. I counted the ticks on the wall clock behind her head. Then she said, "You want to clean toilets? That's your big plan?" My dad walked in from the garage. He'd heard enough. "I already told Jim at work about your MBA. Paige was at a friend's house. She texted me later that night. Mom says you're being dramatic." Only one person asked to see the binder. My grandmother, Ruth. 78 now, but back then she was 68 and sharp as a tax audit. She sat on her porch, read every page, and said, "Show me where you'll be in year 3. She gave me $800 from her savings, and a handkerchief, white cotton, hand-embroidered, monogrammed with her initials, RH. She pressed it into my palm and said, "For the hard days." That night, my mother told me if I wanted to scrub floors, I could do it without her money. She cut me off. I folded my binder, put it in my backpack, and drove 4 hours to Indianapolis. I didn't argue. I just drove. My first apartment cost $475 a month. Studio. 1 window. Radiator that clanked at 3 a.m. like someone was trapped inside the wall. I bought a used van for $2,200. White. No logo. The air conditioning worked on Tuesdays and Fridays. No discernible reason. My first client was a dental office on Meridian Street. 3 rooms, a waiting area, a bathroom with mint green tile. $200 a week. I cleaned it myself every morning at 5 a.m. before spending the afternoon knocking on doors and the evening doing my own books at the kitchen counter. 6 months in, I had 4 contracts. I was working 7 days a week, and my shoulders ached in a way that didn't stop when I slept. By the end of year 1, I'd brought in $62,000 in revenue. Profit, $11,000. I hired my first employee, Maria, a single mom from Guatemala who showed up 15 minutes early every shift and never once complained about the work. She's still with me. Every Sunday, I called Grandma Ruth. She'd ask specifics. How many clients? What was my close rate? Had I looked into liability insurance yet? She listened the way people listen when they believe what you're building is real. Every other week, I called home. My mom picked up, and the conversation was always the same. You ready to come home yet? Not yet, Mom. Well, Paige is doing very well at her new job. Tell her I said congrats. My dad never got on the line. By year 3, something happened that almost made me pick up the phone and call my mother. Almost. But I'd learned by then that almost doesn't count in my family. Year 3 changed everything. I signed a contract with a 12-story office building on the north side of Indianapolis. Annual value, $340,000. I opened a second location, hired my 38th employee. Revenue crossed $1.4 million. I was 25 years old and running a company that cleaned more square footage in a week than most people walk in a year. I called my mother. Mom, I just signed a contract worth $340,000 a year. Pause. Then. So how many people are you sending to mop floors now? 38. 38 people mopping floors. That's something. My dad's voice came through the speakerphone. Your sister just got accepted into a leadership program at her company. I sat in my office, a real office by then, with a desk and a filing cabinet and a framed photo of Grandma Ruth on the shelf, and I stared at the business card I'd just had printed. Navy blue, clean font, Holloway Commercial Services. Tagline along the bottom. Excellence in every detail. I designed it myself. Spent 2 days choosing the shade of blue. That was the last time I volunteered information about my business to my parents. I didn't make a decision about it. There was no dramatic moment, no declaration. I just ran out of doors to knock on. When you tell someone you signed a contract worth $340,000 and they ask how many people you're sending to mop floors, the message is clear. They've decided what you are. New information won't change the file. For the next 7 years, they believed exactly what they wanted to believe, and I let them. Fast forward. Holloway Commercial Services, 14 states, 283 employees. Annual revenue, $18 million. We service hospitals, universities, corporate headquarters, government buildings. My employee retention rate, 87%, is the highest in the industry. I built a training program for ESL workers that 3 competitors have tried to copy. I live in Indianapolis. I drive a 2019 Honda Accord. I own a condo downtown that I bought in cash, and I keep a bottle of homemade lemon vinegar cleaner on my desk because I still like the smell. It reminds me of the beginning. None of this is secret. I have a website, a LinkedIn page, a short Wikipedia article I didn't write. My parents have never looked at any of it. Then Paige called. It was the first time in 4 months. I was reviewing a facilities proposal when her name popped up. I almost let it ring. I'm engaged, she said. Garrett Ellsworth. His family is hosting an engagement dinner next Saturday. Mom wants you there. Mom wants me there? Or you want me there? Does it matter? Grandma Ruth's coming. She asked for you specifically. That settled it. When Ruth asks, I show up. After we hung up, I typed the name into my laptop. Ellsworth Property Group, 200 commercial properties across Ohio and Indiana. I knew the name. I knew it very well. 18 months ago, My company won the cleaning contract for 47 of their buildings. $3.8 million a year. The largest deal in my company's history. The contract was signed by the chair of their board, Catherine Ellsworth, the groom's mother. I stared at the screen for a long time. Friday afternoon, the day before the dinner. I stood in my office and looked at the bottle on my desk. Lemon juice, white vinegar, water. Same recipe I mixed in my studio apartment 10 years ago when I couldn't afford commercial products. I unscrewed the cap and held it under my nose. Citrus and acid. It smelled like 5 a.m. shifts and aching shoulders and mint green bathroom tile. It smelled like the beginning of everything. I picked my outfit that evening. Navy blouse, the same shade as my company logo, though nobody at that dinner would know that. Black slacks, flat shoes, no jewelry except a thin gold chain Grandma Ruth gave me for my 30th birthday. I wasn't dressing to impress. I wasn't dressing to prove anything. I was dressing the way I dress every day, like a woman who has work to do. Saturday morning, I called Ruth. "I'm on my way, Graham." "Drive safe, honey." She paused. Her voice had thinned over the past year. The heart medication made her tired, and I could hear it. "And Julia?" "Yeah?" "Don't let your mother shrink you." I pulled onto I-70 heading east, 3 hours to Carver. 3 hours of flat Indiana highway and corn stubble and radio stations that fade in and out like old friendships. 3 hours to decide how much of myself I was willing to bring into that room. I thought about Catherine Ellsworth. She would be there. She would recognize me. And I didn't know what she'd say. Or what my parents would say when she said it. I wasn't planning anything. I want to be clear about that. I drove to that dinner for one reason. A 78-year-old woman with a bad heart who wanted to see her granddaughter. Everything else just happened. The Birchwood sits on a 2-lane road outside Carver. Farm to table. Exposed brick. The kind of place that serves bread in a cloth napkin and charges $42 for a pork chop. I pulled into the parking lot at 6:55 p.m. 5 minutes early. My mother's car was already there. The silver Buick, parked near the entrance. Gerald's coat hung in the back seat. Paige's white SUV was 2 spots over, a just-engaged sticker on the bumper that looked like it had been applied with a ruler. The private dining room was at the back. Long oval table, 23 place settings, warm lighting, bread baskets, water glasses already filled. My mother met me at the threshold. She wore a plum dress and a necklace I'd never seen before, probably new for the occasion. She hugged me, quick, tight. Her hand gripped my shoulder the way you grip a steering wheel in bad weather. "You look comfortable," she said, eyes scanning my blouse, my flats. She smiled. It didn't reach her temples. Gerald stood behind her. He shook my hand, his own daughter, and said, "Glad you came." He looked at my left ear the entire time. Paige crossed the room in heels, engagement ring catching the overhead light. She hugged me with both arms, which surprised me. "Thanks for coming, Jewel." She introduced me to Garrett, tall, polite, firm handshake, and said, "This is my older sister. She lives in Indianapolis. No job, no title, just a city." At the far end of the table I spotted Grandma Ruth, wheelchair, thinner than 3 months ago. Cardigan buttoned to the throat. She reached for my hand before I reached for hers. "There's my girl." I sat beside her. Catherine hadn't arrived yet. Appetizers came out. Bruschetta, crab cakes, a cheese board that could feed a high school basketball team. Diane worked the room like a campaign manager. She made introductions one by one. Every family member got a label. "This is my brother Tom, retired fire chief, 31 years of service." "My niece Sarah, just finished nursing school, top of her class." Each person tagged with a title, a rank, a reason to be respected. She skipped me. Not in a dramatic way, not a pointed silence. She just moved past my chair the way you move past a lamp you've had so long you don't notice it anymore. Robert Ellsworth noticed. He was Garrett's father. Silver-haired, easy smile, the kind of man who asks questions because he's genuinely curious, not because he's checking boxes. He leaned across the table. And what do you do, Julia? Before I could answer, my mother's voice cut in from 2 seats away. Oh, Julia does cleaning work, residential. You know. She waved her hand. A flick, like brushing crumbs off a counter. I picked up my water glass, took a sip, set it back down. Robert nodded politely. Garrett's sister Megan, 26, warm eyes, a teacher in Columbus, tilted her head. Oh, like a cleaning service? That's pretty cool. Diane smiled. Well, it's a living. Under the table, Grandma Ruth found my hand. She squeezed once, firm. Her knuckles were swollen, but the grip was steady. I squeezed back. Then the front door opened. Heels on hardwood. A voice from the hallway apologizing for the traffic on Route 9. Catherine Ellsworth walked into the private dining room. And everything I thought I knew about this evening shifted. Catherine Ellsworth was 61 years old and looked like a woman who had earned every one of those years on her own terms. Silver bob, gray blazer over a black blouse, no excessive jewelry, just a watch that probably cost more than my first van. She moved through the room with the efficiency of someone who chairs quarterly board meetings. Handshake, name, eye contact, next. Garrett kissed her cheek. Robert pulled out her chair. Diane beamed and said something about how lovely it was to finally meet in person. Catherine came around the table. She reached me. She stopped. Half a second, maybe less. But I saw it. A flicker behind her eyes. Recognition. Then recalibration. Her gaze moved to my blouse. Navy blue, the same shade she'd seen across a boardroom table in Columbus 18 months ago. She took my hand, held it a beat longer than the others. Julia, how lovely to see you here. Her voice was measured, warm, but there was a question folded inside it that she wasn't ready to unfold yet. Mrs. Ellsworth, good to see you too. She sat down across from me, placed her napkin on her lap, accepted a glass of water from the server, and then, very quietly, she looked at me one more time. Nobody noticed. Diane was telling Robert about the time Paige won a regional marketing award. Gerald was studying the wine list like it contained a secret message from God. Paige was laughing at something Garrett whispered. But I noticed. And Catherine knew I noticed. She didn't say anything else for the next 20 minutes. She ate her appetizer. She complimented the crab cakes. She asked Garrett about his new apartment. And she waited. Let me tell you about the first time I met Catherine Ellsworth. 18 months before that dinner, I flew to Columbus, Ohio, for the biggest pitch of my career. Ellsworth Property Group managed over 200 commercial buildings, office towers, medical complexes, mixed-use developments across 4 states. They were looking for a single vendor to handle cleaning services for 47 of those properties. The contract was worth $3.8 million a year. I wore my Navy suit. I brought a 40-page proposal. I'd spent 3 weeks building it. Service tiers, staffing models, quality control protocols, cost comparisons. I printed 5 copies and drove to a FedEx at midnight to get them spiral-bound. Catherine chaired the meeting. 6 people at the table. She asked more questions than the other 5 combined. She wanted to know my employee retention rate, 87%. She wanted to know about my training program, 40 hours of onboarding, monthly check-ins, ESL support. She wanted to know why I started the company. I told her the truth. Because I cleaned my first office at 22 with a spray bottle and a borrowed mop, and I decided no one who does this work should feel invisible. She didn't smile. She wrote something down. After I signed the contract, she walked me to the elevator. She said, I've signed a lot of contracts, Julia. This is the first time I felt the other person cared more about the people doing the work than the profit margin. I kept that sentence in my head for months because it was the first time someone with real authority had looked at what I built and called it what it was. My parents had 10 years to say something like that. A stranger said it in 15 minutes. Back at the dinner. Main course. Pan-seared salmon, roasted vegetables, a risotto that nobody was paying attention to because the conversation had turned to careers. Robert Ellsworth was the one who opened the door. So, Diane, you must be proud of both your girls. My mother set down her fork, tilted her head. That look. Half smile, half calculation. I've seen it 1,000 times. She was framing the shot. Oh, Paige is our shining star, promoted twice in 3 years. Her company just trusted her with their biggest client. Diane touched Paige's arm. Paige smiled, embarrassed but not enough to stop it. Diane paused. Let the silence do the work. Then the pivot. Julia takes a different path. She's more hands-on. Gerald didn't need a cue. He leaned toward Robert like they were sharing a joke at a bar. She started out cleaning offices after college. We thought it was temporary. Small laugh. 10 years later? He trailed off. Shrugged. Like the rest of the sentence wasn't worth finishing. Megan looked at me. Garrett looked at his plate. Robert stopped chewing. I cut my salmon. Steady hand. Chewed. Swallowed. Took a sip of water. At the end of the table, Grandma Ruth set her fork down hard enough to clink against the plate. Julia's doing just fine, Diane. My mother didn't miss a beat. Smile still perfect. Of course she is, Mom. Nobody said otherwise. Nobody said otherwise. That's how she operated. Never an accusation you could pin down. Just implication. Layered so thick you couldn't breathe under it. Catherine Ellsworth picked up her water glass. Set it down without drinking. Her eyes hadn't left my mother for 30 seconds. Diane didn't notice. She never looked at the people who were actually watching. Between the main course and dessert, I excused myself. The bathroom was down a narrow hallway. Cream walls, a framed watercolor of a barn, the kind of art that exists only in restaurants and dental offices. Gerald was waiting in the hall when I came out, hands in pockets, shoulders rounded. He looked like a man who'd been standing there for a while, trying to decide whether to stay or go. Hey, Jewel, you doing okay? I'm fine, Dad. He shifted his weight. Left foot, right foot. I know your mom can be a lot, but she means well. Does she? He opened his mouth. Something flickered across his face. Not courage, exactly, but the shadow of it. Like a man reaching for a door handle in the dark. His fingers turned his wedding ring. 1 rotation, 2. Then, from the dining room. Gerald, can you come get more wine? My mother's voice. Crisp. Final. The way you call a dog that's wandered too far from the yard. He blinked. I should go. He turned and walked back. Didn't look over his shoulder. Didn't say another word. I stood in that hallway and watched him disappear into the warm light of the dining room, and I thought, that was as close as he'd ever come. That half sentence in a hallway was the best Gerald Holloway could offer, and it still wasn't enough to finish. I'd stopped counting on almost a long time ago. I went into the bathroom, washed my hands. The soap was lemon-scented, sharp, acidic, familiar. It hit me in the chest the way a song does when you hear it in a grocery store 15 years after it mattered. I dried my hands, breathed, walked back to the table. I sat back down. Grandma Ruth touched my wrist, her version of asking without asking. I nodded. She let go. Paige had stepped away to talk to Garrett near the window. Her phone lay face down on the table beside her bread plate. The screen lit up. Notification banner. Group chat. Wedding planning with a ring emoji. I didn't pick it up. Didn't touch it. But the preview was right there. Bright against the white tablecloth. And I have functioning eyes. Diane's name. Sent 2 hours before dinner. Whatever you do, don't let Julia talk about her work tonight. The Ellsworths don't need to know our family has a cleaning lady. Beneath it, Paige. Sent 1 hour before dinner. Already handled. I introduced her as my sister in Indianapolis. That's it. I read both lines twice. Then the screen went dark. 23 people in this room. 3 of them had coordinated in advance to make sure I stayed small. Not a spontaneous remark. Not a careless slip. A plan. Written down. Time-stamped. I picked up my water. Drank. Set it down. Grandma Ruth studied my face. She couldn't have seen the phone from her angle, but she read something in my jaw, my shoulders, the way I held my glass. You all right, honey? I'm fine, Gram, just seeing clearly. She didn't push. She never does. Ruth has spent 78 years learning when to speak and when to let silence carry the weight. Paige came back, picked up her phone without checking the screen, and slid it into her purse. She smiled at me. Bright. Easy. A smile that had never once wondered what it cost to receive. Dessert menus arrived. I didn't open mine. Under the table, I opened my wallet. Found the handkerchief. White cotton, 10 years soft. The monogram had faded from navy to something closer to dusk. RH. But I could feel the stitching with my thumb. Ruth had pressed this into my palm the night I left Carver. I'd carried it every day since. Through the studio apartment, through the first contract, through the second location, the 50th employee, the 100th building. It had been in my pocket when I signed the Ellsworth deal. It was in my pocket now. I ran my thumb across the thread and thought about the group chat. 2 messages, 6 sentences, 10 years of assumptions, scheduled and confirmed like a dinner reservation. This wasn't about ignorance. They knew enough to plan around it. They knew enough to agree on a script. Don't let Julia talk about her work. As if my work were a stain they needed to cover before company arrived. I didn't decide to expose anyone. I didn't form a plan or rehearse a speech. I just made a decision that was 10 years overdue. I would stop being smaller than I am. If someone asked me a direct question, I would give a direct answer. No downplaying, no deflecting, no performing modesty to protect people who had never protected me. Catherine caught my eye across the table. She was stirring cream into her coffee with the slow precision of a woman who notices everything. "How's Indianapolis treating you?" she asked. "Busy," I said. "Good busy." She nodded, took a sip, said nothing else. But I could see her doing the math. The woman Diane described versus the woman she'd met in a boardroom. The numbers weren't adding up. And Catherine Ellsworth was not a woman who tolerated bad arithmetic. If you've ever sat at a family table and felt invisible, felt like the person they described wasn't the person you'd become, I need you to hit subscribe right now. Because what happens next at this dinner is the reason I'm telling you this story. And I promise you, you're going to want to be here for it. Dessert plates hadn't landed yet when my mother stood up. She tapped her knife against her wine glass. 2 crisp clinks. And the room went quiet. "I'd like to say a few words." She pressed her hand to her chest, eyes glistening. On command. I've seen her do this at funerals, at church potlucks, at PTA meetings where she needed a budget approved. Diane Holloway can summon tears the way some people summon an Uber. When I look at Paige, she